During the industrial era, we thought that all of our problems were solved, as we created inventions that made life significantly easier. Little did we know, we created a whole new problem for ourselves in this process. This problem being climate change. Health Affairs, December 19th of 2018 explains that climate change poses many threats to our existence, from health effects, severe storms, fires, droughts, to the increasing temperature within the atmosphere. And considering that climate change poses an existential threat to our existence, we ought to consider today's question. How should the United States approach climate change? And the answer is by focusing on CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions, as there is a linear correlation between the rising in the atmosphere and the amount of carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions that are currently being released. We need to focus on this for 3 key reasons. First, the dangers of landfills. Second, the need for clean energy. And third, a reform in infrastructure helping significantly. First, if we focus on landfills, we will be able to significantly reduce the amount of emissions coming from landfills. The University of Minnesota, October 25th of 2016 explains that in 2010, there was over 800 million metric tons of CO2 emitted into the atmosphere worldwide. And the United States emitted 130 metric tons of methane from their landfills. So if we focus on reforming those landfills, we'll be able to reduce the carbon emissions very significantly. And focusing on the amount of methane in the United States released from the landfills, as methane has a shorter lifespan than carbon, would significantly sink the amount of emissions that are being released into the atmosphere, a large step for approaching climate change. Also, the Center for American Progress, April 16th of 2014 explains that we can do this by focusing on a waste-to-energy system. We'll be able to take our waste and create more energy from it, reducing the amount of trash that is in our landfills and significantly helping our approach to climate change. Not only can we address our landfills, but also we can focus on clean energy. The Center for Climate and Energy Solutions last accessed January 26th of 2021 explains that oil and gas in the United States is the largest CO2 and methane creator in our country. And focusing on clean energy will significantly reduce these harms that are created because of having harmful energy. Just Energy 2021 explains that we can address this in many different ways, from solar power to wind, hydrogen, or hydroelectric, and geothermal, and even using the tides of the ocean to create power without the significant harms that we will see from coal and oil. Lastly, climate change can be addressed, and the emissions into the atmosphere can also be reduced by reforming our viewpoint on how we address our infrastructure. The World Bank, April 5th of 2018 explains that low-carbon infrastructure can be implemented to reduce the carbon emissions. Currently, infrastructure spending and building contributes to 70% of the United States greenhouse gas emissions. And because of this, when we focus on low-carbon infrastructure, it will significantly help our approach to climate change. The Science Daily of January 27th of 2020 explains that one way we can do this is replacing cement and steel in our buildings to wood, as wood would provide many benefits that we're seeing harms coming from with steel and cement. The same source explains that this would reduce CO2 emissions in 2 main ways. First, we're going to avoid the production of steel and cement significantly, which will reduce carbon emissions very, very significantly, and other greenhouse gases that evolve from said production. And secondly, we're also going to see a sink in carbon emissions because of the idea that the CO2 is in wood and it would be holding it within the wood as we build with it. Not only do we see climate change progress with reforming our infrastructure as per greenhouse gas emissions, but also reforming our infrastructure would, by using wood, would force us to revise our designs, which would prevent the dangerous air vents inside of urban areas from occurring. This has significant impact because of the idea that in the United States specifically, urbanization is continuing to become widespread. And as this urbanization continues, replacing cement and steel with wood will significantly reduce the carbon emissions that we're going to see happening on a higher magnitude as we continue with urbanization. In the end, we considered the question, how should the United States approach climate change? And ultimately what we're seeing is that even though we've gotten lots of benefits from industrialization, we've also seen a high increase in the harms from CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions because of these types of power, such as oil and coal, that we realized were possible. We can address this in three main ways. By first, the dangers of landfills. Second, implementing clean energy. And third, reforming our infrastructure. Thank you.